Radhe Radhe. Today is Saturday, 11th January 2025. And first of all, the wishes for Happy New Year or Happy Bhakti Divas as Maharajji had christened, the 1st of January, because it's a whole new year ahead to be able to take part in bhakti and practicing our faith and sadhana. So again, Happy New Year, Happy Bhakti Divas once again to everyone. The first time that we all met this year in this Bhagavad Gita study series. So here we are to present to you the recap video for today's class. I'll bring up the screen momentarily and see what we covered. So as the slide comes up, you'll see that we covered chapter 10, verses 14 and 15. As always, it was first started off with the recap quiz that covered last time's content. Last time means we met a few weeks ago, of course, because of the holidays and festive season. So do go back through your notes and the other recap videos to understand all the material. The prior, content was on chapter 10, verses 11, 12, and 13. So that's what the recap quiz that you'll see in the slides via the portal will cover. Today, then, we get to chapter 10, verse 14 first. Sarvam etad ritam manye yanmam vadasi keshava nahi te bhagavan vyaktim vidur devana danavaha. So as we saw in class, chapter 10, verse 14 has the catchphrase all accepting with alliteration, because indeed Arjun states or acknowledges here to Sri Krishna that he totally accepts everything that Sri Krishna has told him. If you all recall the exercise we did in class, just read this as I accept, and then try it as I totally accept, or try I accept everything. Whenever you're missing one or both of the words, that essence is going to be missing. And really, the totality, or to use a different word, right? The full extent is I totally accept everything. Arjun here acknowledging, because it's not partial understanding or partial comprehension. It's not full comprehension of just a partial set of information. It is totally and everything. So very important, however trivial perhaps those words may seem. And again, it is the humility of Arjun as a student, but also as a devotee of Sri Krishna, to acknowledge that he totally accepts everything Sri Krishna has told him. And as Swamiji says in the commentary, of course, Arjun has been listening attentively. His thirst keeps on increasing. He would like to be able to hear more. And he's eligible to hear more, of course, because he is a devotee of Sri Krishna and because he has acknowledged that he totally accepts everything. That totally accepting everything, as Swamiji says, is quite specifically everything from chapter 7, 8, and 9, and now in chapter 10 as well. As we mentioned in class, there is a transition that takes place right after the first 6 chapters, and especially from chapter 7, we start hearing about Sri Krishna's glories, attributes, opulences, etc. And in particular, Sri Krishna starts saying that he is this, or describing himself as possessing that ability, and so on. If you remember, we mentioned chapter 7 as an example. Everything rests in Sri Krishna as beads on a thread. That famous popular verse and the analogy that you can visually recognize. That's just one example. But again, everything from chapter 7 and beyond, Arjun totally, fully accepts all of that. So in fact, he makes himself continuously humble and also continuously eligible to hear more and more. What he's hearing are they're not at all metaphors. Everything is factual because it is the word of God. Vani, as we say. So the Vani of Sri Krishna is what is being mentioned verse after verse. And then, as you all remember, we talked about Bhagwan. Bhagavan here, Bhagwan in Hindi. We see Arjun has used a specific name here for Sri Krishna, a common popular one, of course, that we know. We've also seen that when we talk about the 3 aspects of God, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagwan. So here Swamiji mentions Bhagwan is used by Arjun in this specific context. Bhagwan as a word, as a name, as a term is defined in the Devi Bhagavad Puran. And it is about, we mentioned, I think at the start of chapter 10, Bhagwan is he who possesses six opulences, and not just opulences, but opulences to the infinite extent. They are five and one, as I kind of mentioned in class: strength, knowledge, beauty, fame, renunciation, and opulence. So, kind of like a loop within a loop, again, showing that whole extensive, infinite nature, ability, strength, and presence of God. So, quite self-explanatory in terms of understanding what is God's, strength, knowledge, beauty, fame, renunciation. We accept all that to be, of course, infinite and well above us. And then opulence as well. Opulence referring to richness, grandeur, luxury, but in a divine context as well. It is that whole element of wealth, luxury, or a display of all that grandeur that only Sri Krishna can do. And that is why Bhagwan is defined as he who possesses these six opulences, including, of course, the opulent nature itself, the opulence in terms of everything that he possesses as well, both materially and divine. So that is the definition here for Bhagwan. And then in conclusion, Arjun states that it is, nobody who can understand or know God. So the Devtas, who are the celestial gods, the Danavs, who are the demons, the Manavs, who are human beings, nobody can understand God because they all have finite abilities. Even Devtas, although many times people think, oh, maybe they know or understand God, they're just elevated souls, and so that's a temporary position they have. Even they have to be graced by God to be able to know Him. They cannot understand the full identity of Bhagwan. As you all remember, we showed in class the flyer that was for this specific verse with the question to ponder about: with full acceptance, which opulent appellation does Arjun use for Sri Krishna? A little bit of a rhyme, perhaps here: opulent, appellation, or at least some similar sound. And we all know the answer. It is indeed Bhagwan. Bhagwan, opulent here, is in double quotation marks. Bhagwan is he who possesses those six opulences to the infinite extent. And one of them itself is opulence. So Bhagwan is that new appellation we see here, though commonly known, used by Arjun for Sri Krishna. Next up, let us look at chapter 10, verse 15. Swayam evatmanatmanam vethat tvam purushottama bhuta bhavana bhutesha deva deva jagatpate. The chapter 10, verse 15 has the catchphrase Krishna's knower. Again, alliteration. And as we had said in class, two things here. One is who perhaps, if any, is Krishna's knower? Who can be a knower of Krishna? We all try to seek that, and we saw in the commentary who or what that might be. But also, if you read this as Krishna is knower, or we cut the word the, Krishna is the knower, indeed, only Krishna is the knower of himself. So that's the essence really for chapter 10, verse 15. Indeed, as Arjun says, continuing from chapter 10, verse 14, only Sri Krishna knows himself, and that is by his inconceivable energy. And then there are a lot more of other appellations, names, or descriptions that Arjun uses for Sri Krishna. So Swamiji says that Arjun is emphasizing that Sri Krishna is the supreme divine personality. For those who were in class, we saw this earlier itself through the recap quiz specific question on that. So it's important that you go back and look at chapter 10, verses 12 and 13 as well. Arjun acknowledging or stating or declaring that Sri Krishna is the supreme divine personality. And he echoes, in fact, what the great sages had proclaimed much prior to him. So again, back here, chapter 10, verse 15, Sri Krishna is the supreme divine personality. And then there are some new appellations or names that we see. We saw earlier in chapter 9, verse 5 already, Bhuta Bhavana, so the creator of all beings or the universal father. And now we see Bhuta Isha, that is the supreme controller, the lord of all beings. Jagat Pate, Jagat, world or universe. So the Lord and Master of creation. And Deva Deva, as you might expect, the God of all gods, the God of all the celestial gods. Even the Shvetashvatar Upanishad, as Swamiji quotes, states the same thing. God can never be surpassed. He is beyond everything. And so Swamiji concludes in the last paragraph of the commentary by saying that, again, building up from the prior verse, nobody can know God. That is logical. That is true. As he often says, we, at best, we have finite and material minds and intellects. Therefore, we cannot understand or comprehend the infinite and divine nature of God. To do that, of course, we would hope to get someday a divine mind, a divine intellect. And that can happen only when we are eligible for God's grace. Therefore, the only one personality who knows God is God Himself. And of course, at a certain stage or point in in a certain lifetime, eligible fortunate souls who get the grace of God can, of course, know God. So that's the important takeaway for chapter 10, verse 15. Now, before I forget, let's again go back to chapter 9, verse 5. As we showed in class, that's an important verse we had covered originally to show Bhuta Bhavanaha, which is again the term used today in chapter 10, verse 15. So, Bhuta Bhavanaha, right? We have the creator of all beings, an appellation for Sri Krishna. But later also, as the class progressed, we also noticed, right? God, Sri Krishna, is able to stay aloof from us. He's not disturbed or touched by the material world. And that is because of Yogmaya power. Or as we had showed in class, if you all remember our prayer that we go through each time, the third one, the last part of it, Hladinim Shakti Rupinim. The Hladini Shakti, that Yogmaya power, Radharani, that is who keeps God aloof from all of us, and how God can go ahead and do all his other pastimes, in fact, getting us to help serve and to love God. So, important information in chapter 9, verse 5, as well as the concept of that other name from the Vedas, the Shanguli. So, all this is something you can revisit as well. Back here, chapter 10, verses 14 and 15, we ought to also look at a couple of important Sanskrit terms. So, today, let's look at rhythm. Rhythm is truth. We all are here trying to, of course, learn and continuously learn the absolute truth from the Supreme Lord. So, rhythm is truth. And in fact, as Arjun says, that is what he has totally accepted. All of it is that truth that Sri Krishna has been telling him thus far. So we keep that. Of course, we all know Bhagwan, Bhagwan. That's an important one, but all of us are familiar with that. You can consider this one. What is it that we're trying to understand about God? One of that aspects is his personality. So Vyaktim would be an important Sanskrit term to consider as well. And then this one we may have seen before, but no, as in K-N-O-W. Again, Vetha. So that is a Sanskrit term we can add. And let's do this one today. One of the appellations we have learned for Sri Krishna, for the Supreme Lord, Bhutesha, made up of Bhuta Isha. Isha is to do with the Lord, God. So the Lord of everything, Bhutesha, again made up of Bhuta Isha. So we can keep those, either add them as new or revisit them in our Sanskrit dictionaries. Again, we talked about that flyer, of course, with the term or the appellation that Arjun uses for Sri Krishna. And of course, one more time, I think I forgot to show. Again, Happy New Year, Happy Bhakti Divas to one and all. So that is, of course, the Supreme Lord, Krishna, baby Krishna, in a multiple number of, US cities, let's say here, as depicted by design, wishing us, of course, and we, of course, wishing the Lord for more, opportunities to be blessed and eventually graced by Him, whatever the circumstances might be. With that, we get to the end of this recap video. Don't forget, as always, if you look at the description to the video, you can get the link to the community portal where the slides you saw on the screen, this recap video, and all other prior material are available. And we, of course, look forward to seeing you next time. That'll be Saturday, 18th January 2025. That is, again, 8 a.m. Central Time, 7:30 p.m. India time. Again, thank you so much. Until then, Radhe Radhe.